just so true. That is not even
This is a dangerous game playing with judges. Just like.
Jane, they got the reparations thing on here too.
Wait, what is
Wait,
it?
they
It says Gabby also wants reparations. Well, because they told Exodus to put reparations, like be like, Gabby was like, also make sure you say that I want reparations, and it's on the little scrolling message.
Link the Venmo.
No.
You want the link?
No. No, Rudy was like, please link my Venmo on there too.
No,
and I'm like,
Venmo.
absolutely not. Oh.
No,
actually.
Why not? You know, there's gonna be some people who be like, oh, throw some money.
I didn't think they'd actually put that. I was completely joking. Ready?
Oh, that's fine.
To be fair, this is an improvement. You were like
We
30
only have
minutes
14
late to
right
our
now.
round at Weaver.
Wait, can I see it? Alright, so I sent it
We got the match.
on the official TM email chain. Oh, I messed up this guy's email. I'm gonna send it again.
Put me on the email, dude.
Yeah, I messed up. Wait, no, put me on the email.
Can you message me?
Did I spell that right?
Yes, yeah.
Email. That's right.
But you're watching us as you're debating us?
I've had multiple people be like, it's kind of weird and meta, but I actually like, I started I'm watching us, I'm really just trying to interact with the people in the chat. Because I like to, because they usually, like last night,
Secret arguments.
I'll be
Yeah,
honest with
they're
you,
gonna-
if these high schoolers give me a secret argument, I don't trust them. I don't even. Also, low key, if I gotta ask high schoolers for a secret argument in the middle of this round, I'm already very far behind.
Okay, I think you have convinced me that this is a good idea. To be on the live stream.
Yeah, and the chat's kind of cool because like you get to build relationality with like some of the other kids that are trying to get in.
What group is it?
It's not, Shanae, I just sent you a message with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it should be being posted pretty soon into College Policy page.
Wait,
I
will
don't
you send
think
it
we
to
are
me too,
friends, but I can
Nico?
still send you one. It's just gonna be in your message request on Facebook.
Nico, will you send me it too?
Yes.
I'm not gonna watch it during the round, but I want to see it.
Oh, I will.
Yeah.
I'll ask you later.
Wait, are you friends with Shanara on Facebook?
Yeah.
Okay, Shanara can send you because I tried to Google your name and like a bunch of people came up. So
I can't be that.
Well, on Facebook.
not Google, you know what I mean. Gabby, I sent to you on Facebook too.
Thank you.
LOL.
But I can't watch it.
It's J-A-L-I-S-S-A, right? One N.
What are people saying in the chat?
Oof, this is
People right now
weird.
just said I think the sound is not working.
Wait, who's the people champ for this tournament?
People's champ is Iowa.
I think it's
We're the people's octafine.
yeah, we're the people's octafine. Those people's champion is Iowa. They won't see.
I know, but who are they saying people's champ?
They might be saying that because I put my hair down whenever they tell me to put my hair down, and that's what happened last year. Last year when we were debating,
Just for your hair.
I honestly do though. They're like, cause someone on the chat last night was like, I don't know if you remember, but at the NDT last year, you put your hair down when we asked you to. Would you do it again? And I was like, I do remember, and sure, I guess.
Oh, is
like,
there a delay on this?
Yeah, it's like a
me unreality issue.
I mean, your hair is
Yeah,
beautiful
it's
and all,
like,
but
it's probably 45 to 45 seconds.
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
what it is.
Holy shit.
Now that we're all able to interact with each other on the live stream,
Well, did everyone get the email?
I have it. I got it as well.
Let me open mine.
Okay. So everyone just let me know when you're good to go then.
Anthony, you trying to join this this live stream chat? Never mind. No.
Wait, what?
I'll tell you about it later. Don't worry about it. I think that's a no.
Sweet.
No, I'm not thinking about it.
I thought you had Venmo open.
No, because I had to get anyway. I'm good.
Are we all good to go?
Mhm.
Yep. You start the sound?
Got the sound on?
You got it, all right.
Everything
All right, let's go. Round the 8th of the NDT 2018.
Okay. The medical system cannot save black women. Doctors and police alike cannot grasp the suffering of disabled black women because the racial scheme of communication that sciences black thought to make black epistemology remain unrealized. Braiding 12 Anna Brown expressed her pain despite her doctor's opinion. She was fine. The hospital ordered relief and then she wrote this issue still in pain. She was arrested. She woke to the knowledge of her flesh, but her voice is obeyed. The bronze abuse, the subject of Rob's Anna Brown's vocality. As far as an object can speak and not can say to communicate, a root of communicates the logic of community, forming the community dialogue across equal status among communicates. Anna Brown speaks with the microphone, has been turned off. Her voice is heard as incoherent and dangerous. The police trying to Anna drag her out of her wheelchair, inability to walk in charge of resisting guards. Anna tells her she to be in the hospital. Police officers ignore her and threaten her. suffering remains an audible voice will be only heard as resisting arrest, disrespect, authorities legitimizing their violence as they drag or she screams of pain, anti-violence motive by set of non-offensive flesh, so between a hospital and a prison, doctors, police, no one person killed or structure violence, murder, violence, screen, causal things, the acoustics, the suffering world, the mechanism, and impossible for society here, perhaps made black skin, she herself within the black hole, subject to this mood, impossible for the black and soul turns with the break, the loss of physics, refuge, ragged, the clank, through civil society, from the black hole, substitute screen, the black lives matter, till the power of my quiet comes, and decades of meta-studies agree with the app. Anti-blackness overdetermines health disparities at every level. Studies of increased access or insurance can account for structural excesses. Williams and Muhammad and 9 leading causes of death, including heart disease, cancer, diabetes, hypertension, black death rates of 100,000 black persons die each year who die of the racial disparities. Heart disease and cancer are black and white comparable death rates in 1950. African Americans have higher mortality rates, even socioeconomic status controlled. African American women, the cause of being more high rate mortality, while Latino Asian women not complete high school blacks have higher blood pressure, inflammation, total rates, even just in health behaviors and access to care low, more likely to experience unemployment, hazards, percentages, lower wealth, and every income discrimination, criticism, hate, housing, labor markets, criminal justice, educational, loan for treatment, gender, stress leads to premature illness and mortality, predicted systemic review of the database, mental health dominant discrimination literature, burnout, daily mood, psychiatric disorder, chronic problems, other sexual studies find high discrimination, disorder, poor mental health service studies find associated with discrimination, chronic health conditions, smoking, cardiovascular disease, sexual dysfunction, nutritional risk, sleep, fatigue, high growth of breast cancer, perception of racism associated with delays or failures in the treatment and preventive services such as cholesterol testing, eye exams, or flu shot discrimination associated with drug and alcohol dependence. Some individuals cope by denying wrong patients with cancer. 47% deny the diagnosis, 7% deny the impact, and alcohol unconscious effort minimize the pain of racism. Researchers link segregation, elevated risk of illness and death, lower ability for healthy foods, targeting for tobacco and alcohol, economic hardship, environmental toxins, poor quality housing, and criminal victimization, discrimination, affect quality of medical treatment, and minority communities, health services, more likely to close less effective stock of medication, lower quality physicians or black using fewer medical procedures and poor quality care, even when differences in health insurance are taken into account. Unconscious discrimination is likely determined and anti-blackness is a terror of non-comprehension. The appeal to a notion of natural health can only ever articulate through an anti-black garment, lays claim to freedom secured through Black Death, Aronson 16 groups circle around the specificity of the suffering they experience, lay claim for positivity for themselves on the basis of the unveil of black flesh, fighting of blackness, supported by the anti-black comments, rejecting the appeal to ends, claiming someone source freedom because of an absent transgression that was experienced undeserved oppression, distance of the gratuitous defiance of black magazines, and baseline stop defending with the instance legitimacy of the oppressed, the Trojan horse, which constituents spoke about the shores, the metropolitan doing an insurrection, justify defeating the streets, make the instrument irreversible, was abandoned or legitimacy, give the idea that one makes the revolution, name something as a just entity, revolution force for the task of representing revolution was not be understood as the constitution of new social capacity, that should the capture of life, no longer remedy. Imagine the remedy for suffering is the recovery of the lost wounded one is presently deprived, and time itself is weaponized through an anti-black grammar that codes progress narratives as wellness, as psychic exhaustion, captures the future away from black thought, ensures black health, born in 16, exhaustion is the crisis of black citizen, vegetation of progress narratives of climate is one implementation to exceed sexual limitations that recodify exhausted temporal imagining the objective desire from how the exhausted have the phrase, the present phrase getting over is index of exhaustion, someone get over my achieve wellness, success, power, of this compulsion to get over is the price of time. This is now, we're moving forward, leaving sign for the sign of wellness, or accepting confidently reps on knowing how long you've been there, how long term it continues, and part of the domination time which you code is racial privilege, the horrors most some who have thought would never end, so I further focus on master much enough to think about a future time belonging to his master, and a present over the measly bodily pain, psychic torment, and humiliation, or be able to get over the tools of psychology, psychiatry, and therapy. What does wellness mean? Doesn't an anti-vax apology of dominating time, those who are unable or unwilling to engage or stigmatize in ways that fetches the sickness after getting over which to achieve. We cannot separate that wellness and voice of violence and sustain and documents the ways in which wellness, sickness, and psychiatry towards use just by incarcerating black activists, those who not get over, easily diagnosed as insane, sick, and unfit for society. Wellness become an instrument of safety or a lack of protest, silence, and discourse, and affirmation, ethical violence, signs of wellness, expression of pain, and rooted into its own pathology. Thus, we advocate an ethics of utopianism where black women can experience a healthcare system that does not require their death. Temporal capture creates a myth of progressive incremental change that depoliticizes revolutionary times. Impossible dreams of revolution have then more solvency for radical health changes in black self-care. Mercy often 17 Black Lives Matter times alter revolutionary time super anti-blackness condition possibility white supremacy about race in terms of time white race advanced non-white race vacuums black consistency designates the system unequal power the limit which humans lay claim to human science which cannot disruption the sense of past the future creates new temporary which time is not subject to agency for violence and colonial time is limited for indigenous people many central African people want to Americans by 4 times please focus in the cosmology examine the time of revolution and hate your black lives where black lives matter first or at least time is a constant certain level that climax otherwise during generous liking enslaved those enslaved people may desire to inspire the future not only your time revolutionary time unless the potential moment to be animated rather trying to continue with the north and 18th spread to the 65 the demands for 40 acres and move the Deglan time proposed for no account the years which it takes to press at the time which we played 2 months later colonial slavery abolished the ceremonies again hatred revolutions look down to but listen to the voice that speaks in our heart looking to liberty not enlightenment thought but an ethical man from within that cannot be owned the Haitian revolution was a victory over the non-life but there came to be the possibility of such event unthinkable white versus white this makes the past person and future white master becomes future possibility to be black as life as where black life matters and theorizations for black suffering must account for the black matrix, the intersection of anti-black class and patriarchal violence. The black woman is antithesis to democracy in the Western world. Collins and 90 models of oppression are rooted in either or economic mistaking Eurocentric masculine self-social certainty cards the one-sided copy of privilege with the other is denigrated. Significance of seeing race, class, and gender as interlocking system paradox shifted by thinking about oppression. Race, class, and gender represent system oppression with African American women, placing African American women in the center of analysis opens the possibility for both and conceptual sense and hearing through both and conceptual sense does not mean the race, class, and gender oppression interchange for race, class, and gender cancer to absolute oppression the characters black women experience within a matrix. Research restorative black women's thought directly challenges the Eurocentric masculine thought pervading these institutions, and black women are placed within an impossible position of forced community labor for survival, but simultaneously blamed for this. A capitulation to anti-blackness is to a remedy has depoliticized the gendered nature of the labor. Hartman in 16, reductive labor comes to the views absent gender differential. Women's labor falls inside the kind of the black star. Black women refuse work on plantation, neither the future nor the flag for abolition, embrace their labor marriage rather than freedom. With only ways to conceive the remedy of women's elder has proved difficult to assume black women's labors with marriage and career and practicalism, where exactly broken mother is fully witness, but the strike is possible to match her as pragmatic black women were conscripted to a role to carve the care for the White Household, forced to perform the fugitive labor and answer for the White Palace defense. Everyone's defense to relations are kin to depend on this labor. If their subsistence, the position that is reverted or reviled, this labor is neglected, and hours of certainty and refuse to avoid the possible domestic fitting. What provisions her encourage you to one to run, or is she still awaiting your survival and achievement? If you tend to pose another burden of black female flesh by making a placeholder for freedom, another side of how she provides so much, it rarely does she thrive. Her roles when faced as a provider of care, which is very mode for exploitation, and transparency and co-option is an adequate framework to theorize black care because black endurance is a semiotic impossibility within an anti-black world. However, the silence on suffering comes into internalization of shame. Born in 17, feelings provide a necessary vessel for containing suffering, even though we not eradicate violence, we can use laceration and vehicle for endurance. Black care is about obtaining black suffering. Wait for reference to mention care. The access to grammatical meaning, a hierarchical relation, nonsense. Scientists think care, car, their conception of care, translate all sense of injury to grammatical transparency. The care problem with care for blacks is the violation to opaque and decipher where we can re-envision operation instead of transparency. Surveillance operation tells the circulation of nonsense science. Laceration could not be coding using instruments to institutional care because the target psyche is not understood as a legitimate target. The laceration meaningless is time for institutions using transparency as a strategy of domination. One needs came for something anagrammatical. Black hair is a network for strategies meaning or side to side of the physical world. Much responsive work through alone shaping times experiences, having most confidence, question microaggressions, insecurity, internalized one fears, discourse care, would turn the communication outward or equal. One is feeling cannot be completely deciphered to share enables endurance, a cry for the living and the dead, death and the left, and in type of violation. Black hair is essential practice and Bronson Street the sharing is a strategy of endurance and enduring anti-blackness requires above all black hair, and the only acceptable framing of debate to a world to separate the institution from its anti-blackness, which can be only done via prioritizing of blackness, is enough. See, Ed Brinkman 16. We want whiteness managed with history to another space that was impossible. Black liberation means destruction of whiteness. White people don't only destroy their own whiteness to be destroyed with them. Much of the stance against whiteness, also affirmation of blackness, declaration of blackness is enough. What's considered the place or non-place of whiteness, we can destroy with the framework of black folks. The work of better know how to love and be with. The work of surviving of blackness never needed whiteness. Anti-reality makes it impossible to see not only possible work, but there's nothing redeemable. Whiteness, only the radical negation of it is helpful. Black people consist everywhere whiteness. That's why people remove completely not the black nor white spaces. Draw ourselves in the ground, try to figure out how to occupy a positive whiteness because it's impossible. Only frenzy when the sense of order corrupt the whiteness turns to chaos and motivation to destroy it, overcome the compulsion to performance, assume we take seriously black people, the best dreams for the future, close we are to freedom. Black liberation work from a deeply crafted life, death, and suffering of black people. White people playing a role in liberation, always really actors, work concepts, always done entirely in spite of the whiteness, not because it was only after white folks and taking the struggle for black liberation for them, obsessed with it and their own whiteness, absolute dissolving of their place in power. Folks on black folks figuring new and better ways to get free, independent white people, perhaps on Western empires. That's what it said.
Good? Cool. Okay, so my first question is basically just like, why vote affirmative? Or more specifically, even if the affirmative is a good idea, why is the ballot key to kind of the affirmation of the idea?
Our argument is that debate should affirm methods that can be used as things that are good ideas. Any other alternative that articulates the ballot relies on the judge.
How do we kind of understand if something's a good idea?
You come to understand, well, we have a debate about that.
Fair enough. This Brady evidence says that blackness cannot be communicated. What does it mean to communicate?
It doesn't say that blackness can't be
Well, it says that like it is.
It can't be communicated within the grammar that's understood.
Sure. What does it mean to communicate?
In the context of the Anna Brown evidence, there is communicative capacity, i.e. the scream of the slave is an excess.
That's not answering my question.
people's
What does it
ability
mean to communicate?
But I don't even know what the question means outside of the context of the card. In the context of the card, Anna Brown was literally trying to communicate to a hospital and doctors,
Right.
and they could not read her because they over-determined her by scripting her.
Okay,
However,
cool.
there's the scream is always in excess of that.
My next
which
question
why
is,
Brady
what
calls for
impacts does the app claim to solve?
impossible demands. The impacts, one is the sort of temporal capture that happens to black women that tells them the only thing that can exist in the future is more death, more negativity,
Okay.
more anti-blackness, that causes half of all black women to rather die than go back to a doctor.
Okay, next. Anything else?
It also, like we argue that utopianism can be a means for which you can radicalize black women and how they engage in politics because they don't engage in politics because of
Okay.
temporal capture.
Cool. What is wellness? Or more specifically, what defines wellness?
Well, our Warren evidence defines wellness and says it's defined against blackness, which is why the imagination of a utopia where black women are truly cared for is something that is not possible because
Okay.
all conceptions of wellness are articulated through black death.
Cool. So this Merzanoff evidence says that it has net more solvency for radical health changes. I guess I'm curious, what is a radical health change?
You can also read that piece through our piece of Warren evidence.
Sure,
about
what is a radical health
mathematical
change?
science and the way that resolving temporal capture allows people to relate to themselves in a way that's better.
Okay. And this is, I guess, kind of getting to this question of anagrammaticity. How does the 1EC access this?
Well, there's a couple arguments. One, you
Okay.
can read this through Hartman, and you can also read this through Warren 17. One, the Warren 17 evidence says that self-care at the level of the psyche is literally not transparent to the non-black world because black psyches existing in a position of value is not intelligent.
I'm kind of interested in this question.
Apartment evidence about black women.
No, I have a question about this black psyche argument that you're making. Kind of, how do we know what a black psyche is? What makes it distinct from, say, like, I don't know, a non-black psyche?
Well, our argument is that black people face a unique form of violence that articulates.
Is it just like black
No,
people face psychological violence?
The way the temporal capture happens onto black women's psyche means that they literally internalize that the only thing that they can produce and can exist within.
Sure. Does that just mean like the way that like these people grapple with the social is one that produces a particular psychological violence, or are you saying like there's a structural difference in the psyches of black people versus other people?
I don't understand what you mean by structural difference.
That's a fair enough. Okay, I got 10 seconds. I'm good. Cool.
You can just float straight on the
gonna put it on a different sheet, so whatever. Okay, well,
You know I flush her down. Everybody knows I flush her down. Cause y'all gonna collapse it all at the bottom. Easy.
Facts.
maybe.
In the words of Anthony, it'll be case.
I like to surprise myself.
You got something to read, Nico?
Yeah, I know. I was just realizing that I don't really have an answer to Q, and I also just sent Elijah an email asking if I get it.
I would recommend you turn that thing so you can see your face on it.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, your phone's here, and okay. Is everyone okay? Cool. Chief Seattle may or may not have said the young men, the mothers, the girls, the little children who once lived and were happy here still love these lonely places. And at evening the forests are dark with the presence of the dead. When the last red man has vanished from this earth and his memory is only a story among the whites, these shores will still swarm with the invisible dead of my people. And when your children's children think they are alone in the fields, the forests, the shops, the highways, the quiet of the woods, they will not be alone. There is no place in this country where a man can be alone at night. When the streets of your town and cities are quiet and you think they are empty, they will throng with the returning spirits that once thronged them. The dead have power too.
The ghosts of the dead haunt this place. However, decolonization is not exorcism. It's a seance, gratuitous violence of genocide. Marks the issue, wait for a seller being the throgs, the dancing and mournful sorrow, the beating telltale art of the seller's psyche, this young and 17. An unconscious death shock to basis hits and force of this haunts the dream of the common world. The objective is to come towards a sense of balls to drive the primary source of great mass versus the Holocaust or the genocide first peoples took place in the proximity of cage with claims of a shared future being this comfortable known destiny of life from the negation of the civilization policies failed to convert aboriginal forms of life. The federal government intensified its tactics as he failed. The federal government intensified once again the doubling down its effect of the death in the name of fully eradicating this other can only fail the trajectory of aiming towards circularity caught in the trajectory of aiming towards objective authorized and recruits a scale of violence in the name of closing the open the drive items to return to the moment of unique language and enters into the symbolic. The economy signifies offers to a modality difference by association. Meaning is constructed through quilting points, durable concepts that fix ideas to the signifies with structure the entire fields of meaning. The concept of the Indian is a quilting point by which the feudal politics is future a durable concept that organizes the meaning of nation, citizen, sovereignty, subject. Could the indigenous purchase imagines always be outside the theological history and understanding of difference. So through the rubric historical process remains several liberal, neoliberal, political, economic practices and policies. Their life is strictly spatial designation does not make sense. Requires a chronological supplement the configurations and chronological political time of any versus political time nation. There's a register of time and a position. The forward movie structure, the political circular time of Homer states our indigenous category. They hear so annoyed terms like primitive or anachronistic or imagination purely distinguish the difference. The temporal structure of empires of the future is never fully realized, but unfolds ever virtually newness mobilized towards the imagined rising unified citizenry, but also temporarily appears away with on the stage of aboriginal bodies, foundational the politics, the dramatization, the social contract overcoming the same nature, the enactment of the new world, the call to annihilate any others, reverend call of political expression by future, just word to the good life, though, describing the fugitivity of aboriginal children, running away from aboriginal children as signal of the possibility of those children ever becoming escape the icebound lake in winter rising mythical deathscape that returns the continuous precarious location of Indianness in the bodies of indigenous childhood. And land is haunted by the natives not for its death but for its creation. Their project necessarily writes itself through the ink of indigeneity Smith and 15. Colonization is about the creation of the land. It's about the creation of the human itself. For the structural relationship between the human and non-human exists. The distinction between human and non-human must remain equal. The native axis and the midway point between the human and non-human. Rather, the creation of the native is the creation of the good and intelligent. Upon which the antagonistic relationship between the human and non-human being exists. The native, as such, can never actually exist. Black state scholars have challenged the notion that Senegal's exploit labor work is the operation divides the human from the non-human work. Creates the land that first with the native is the traits of grid of intuitively watch the boundary between land creation and human things become meanable. This seems to be provisional humanity by which native people can ever achieve because they can only achieve this when they're no longer indigenous or because the
additions to be able is not to be able to claim that any analysis of raciality must include concern itself with the construction and theoification nature of this is some of the limitations of articulating indigenous structural but land-based struggle in the colonial system. The only thing you can say is it's not your land, it's our land. You don't get to say, well, why is land a thing that anybody gets to own in the first place? That's not even legible. The native as symptom, Hansi, affirmative, tying together the noun of the affirmative. This is Georgian 14. In separation, the subject has to free himself from the FA's act of dividing makes it but looking at theory has reversal alienation for the system by which the subject questions that our two branches signify the other with the symbolic other, both the other personified side response to the looser real fullness of terminal theory represents the symbolic and the lies that also facilitates alienation looking at theory thus illustrates the separation between subject and verb toward recognition of desire lack both the subject other who function the fantasy towards the bliss faculty the gas of the discourse with its own meaning. So subject is constitutes a lost in the conscious that instantiates the separation of the symbolic structure on the racial signifier whiteness which functions as a master signifier which like only white the article fantasy to sovereign human whiteness pursues the idea which all subjects aspire about this matter signifier process is subject precisely acts as being thus directing the racial subject to the very real form by which the subject must operate in this obsessive pursuit of the real thus encouraged by race can lead to a violence of frustration racism. The frustration occurs with like can never reconcile to being the problem with contemporary theoretical political church of regression racism political race relations that the reliance upon the concept of race precludes engagement with upon aggressivity produced by the concept of self the racism all could the object of whiteness gains the discursive dominance of those slaves the masquerade as foul as this universal racism to recognition of the lack and signification of the Lacanian subject is the subject in the field the drive is different from the isolation from the outside because it's an internal force that emerges from the libido as pure light into irrepressible and indestructible black light race is encouraged from the other substitution desire for the drive the movement of the drive involves a circle pass from the desired subject from the other back to the subject in the place of the other drive and counters and close on the PL which is in fact simply the presence of a hollow with the object of race and pride but other finds racial subject circular path around a hollow this serves as the source of identity while failing to achieve right racial identity represented by the object of race the subject of race remains bound to the because the race becomes a cable to the drive solution not just making one seem but more fundamentally making oneself it's because the fast section granted from the center of the tweets also the sense of being granted by race is the road of loss being the drive not to reach the aim Lacan tied the pleasure of this into object to kind of autoeroticism that described the image of a mouse when up in certain silence is close upon its own satisfaction is influenced of tweets onset of planned pleasure the insertion of the self and the other signifier associated with race and the affirmative utopia is built upon the grave of the native is terror earlier since the affirmative builds its utopia necessarily attempts to banish the ghost of native party in 15. The invention utopia was contemporary to invention. The wood inventions corresponded with the emergence of modern humanism. What made America the utopian land par excellence, already indigenous black race, like non-native people, something besides Europeans justify themselves more desirable occupants of their rural indigenous historical that situate this significant emergency utopian narratives historical ongoing narratives landscape and naturalize otherwise sustained settler influence my tender for utopian narratives which address these social dimensions or expressions that desire for a better way of being which are most commonly represented in narrative proposals for alternative societies. Utopia ought to recognize utopian settler modernity, the intent, the orientation towards future realization of transform utopian nobility, social religion, notion, salvation, and heaven become a basis for conceiving modernity and pre-modernity categorized as savage. The utopian settler modernity is constantly renewed as a means of verifying hierarchically differentiated categories of white settlers, always representative of what it means to be progressive and rational. This means the norm of white settler subject always close to the anal representative notions of God, forever, progress, rationality, science, and the scheme of the norm of white settler subject position most directly orientated towards utopia. Utopia serves as example of the norm of settler, which means to look to the past critical eye towards per se exploiting such failings. No instead of being all just already ended. That's a reformulation of utopian settler modernity acts as a simultaneous indicator of settler subject continual progress, also transcendental break from the flood, and already now into passive settler utopian settler modernity reinstigate natural and perpetuate and sustain settlerism. However, outside of the moments of metaphysics or revolutionary time, the furnace haunted by the native utopianism becomes another form of exorcism which attempts to banish the whisperers of the ghostly roaring 16. Recent works in black states argue conceptualize the notion of black racialization, which category of blacks defined against the category of such formulation of black and non-blacks as primary dimension of modern social epistemological ontological order. This work relating towards racialization that themselves from slavery moment they have blindness such slavery is led to the key claim that black states and articulating the faces that look close in the field of black states not fully reckoned with historical dispute between colonialism and slavery. Black studies has not reckoned with black racialization occurring in tandem with cell identity or reducing the problems not one of black states ignoring the presence of issue of how the field addresses black racialization that proves a serious engagement with the dispossession section as argued that slavery proceeds and prepares to wait for colonialism. While this may be a generative theoretical claim, lends conceptual coherence and it's not simply historically accurate. I might have time for that concurrent. And in the end, we're unsatisfied with close to sovereignty or land return to the ETC of our decolonization, which seems to be the only phantasmal, called a holistic name for those who finally for indigenous people from genocide. No, the alternative is no alternative to radical man. The affirmative be held accountable for the ways it participates in native genocide. Each type of secret once heard that haunting is the relentless remember, reminded will not be appeased by settler society's assurance of innocence and reconciliation. Haunting is both acute and general individual haunting, but so our society's haunting doesn't hope to change people's perceptions, nor does it hope for reconciliation. Haunting lies precisely in its refusal to solve. Haunting is to wrong the wrongs young in 17. Archival politics reaching towards unfixing the phantasmal appreciation of the complex of the written in order to emerge because when well words because it cannot be said impulsive approach to archival search is unfixing rather than recruitative action towards the redemption of a lost but noble object. I consider movements that seems to slip over full of the archive that direct the indeterminate spaces of partial presence and nobly that places which the vainest the analysis points of attack archival people failure of class the very continuous test or history assessment of BCB archival historical research standards and protocol, and authentication of verifiability when one reaches and claim raises the question of whose interests are served by continued convexes for recuperative hermeneutics whose feed research for all lost bodies imagine that their bodies found subjectivity that can recover archives are more spaces of catachresis than catharsis. Experiences of archives as catachresis rather than catharsis poses a challenge to writing and resist delivering catharsis to writing about the past, even though some might assuage or satisfy the desire of one's reader. Even that doesn't mean resist the pull of the cathartic, while the historian might do her best to explain the pain of the way that does not fetishize the sufferer, body, or exacerbate suffering, indifference to suffer, or deliver an easy render of pain to the other, calling attention to effects produced by the recitation of black suffering. Harm arguments reinforce the spectacular nature of black suffering. Specularization of black suffering can only serve to recapitulate the overexposed range of my body. Are we witnesses who conform to the truth of what happens to a face of world destroying capacities of pain, or we warriors fascinated with propelled exhibitions of terror and suffering, series of precariousness of impotence, the uncertain line between witness and spectre only more seen that brutality unleashes the demand that suffering be materialized and evidence are brought to rights in the representation of the list, sought to confront the disorientation, the approach necessary recursive rebox order, unsolvable trinity, avoid access to practice, speech, applications, out recognition, that horror had ceded to the routine. This mode recognizes this point of ethics and reputation, essentially the unique challenge of theorizing genocide. Like the genocide.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. This argument of representation, why doesn't voting negative represent the app in negation, i.e. to have understood the app is insufficient?
The last card?
Yeah.
So
The
the
bottom
evidence
part
describes
where you
recuperative analytics, which I think there are two easy examples. First is your mirrors will have evidence.
I'm asking about
describes-
why recognition, i.e. voting negative, doesn't still at the same time recognize and script the app and attempt to make it make sense.
That's in the sense like we say you're wrong. I don't think our app has attempted to make your app.
Your
make sense.
utopia card, which is your Hardy evidence, says that the form of utopia articulated in Western thought, like More's utopia, is bad because it articulates a better form of society where settlers are more comfortable. Why is that possibly bad?
So Nico's gonna take this question.
Yeah, cool. So I think there's a couple arguments here. One, I think the app engages in this type of utopian rhetoric in multiple places. I think the fact that this is not apparently obvious in the app is why it is all the more dangerous. I can go more deeper into this in
Well,
the
then you
explanation
didn't
if
say
you would like.
anything there. I'd like the explanation of it. Like, why is the
Yeah.
app utopia a utopia where white settlers are comfortable
Yeah.
when it's a utopia in which they literally do not exist?
Yeah, couple answers here. One, we don't think this is just a question of like whether or not settlers are comfortable with this, but the way in which we engage in a particular humanist metaphysics that is dangerous. The second argument here is that none of your cards actually cite utopia as method, right? We think that there's an interesting
If black
choice
women
of
are
what.
already seen as producing civil society, then
Mhm.
why is redirection of their labor away from that constitutive of producing humanity still?
Yeah, a couple answers here, which is one, I don't think that you are that redirection.
Okay, that's fair enough answer. Are black women engaging in sort of recuperation into subjectivity now?
I don't like all black women in the
Are
world.
some of them? Are some of them?
Are some of them?
Yeah.
I think in the context of your Hartman evidence, we have to read this in the
I
way
mean,
in
your
which.
last card is about like how people like try to understand like empathy with blackness.
Yeah,
And that
so our
brings
response to
blackness
this-
humanity. Are people doing that now? Are black women doing that now?
I am not sure if all black women
Or some of them.
maybe. I don't
Why?
how would I know this? You're asking if I have analyzed every single black woman and their particular
No,
political
you
orientation?
can make.
This
Well,
is a
you're
ridiculous
analyzing
question.
the psyche of.
I'm
black
particularly
people.
analyzing the way that your app has made a humanist investment that causes the
How?
exact impacts. I can go through
Okay,
the
go
link
ahead.
debate. So the first link that we think we have is this utopianism argument. I think there are multiple.
I've been over that. Can I get the?
Okay, cool. The second is that I don't think you actually fly away from the futurity that your evidence is criticizing in terms of time. I think there are multiple temporal investments in the affirmative that not only makes a call to humanist redress, but also locates itself within a future that can only be produced through the labor
Like
of
what?
black women.
Like what?
Okay, yeah. So for example, I think the way that your Mirzanoff evidence describes what revolutionary time is in is absolutely distinct from both what your Warren evidence and Hartman evidence is talking about, insofar as the moments of liberation and redress will require the black mothering and labor and exclusion of black women who do not access that type of revolutionary
This piece of
time
Lear
your argument is
evidence,
talking
is
about.
there a distinction between blackness and nativeness?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to use the restroom.
it straight down, I guess you can flow it straight down. There's going to be a bit of an overview, so. I mean,
Expect it.
okay. Reply all.
I just got it, so.
Y'all have it?
Yeah, I just got it. Wonder what sneaky things are hiding in this size point font of the Wolverson evidence. I bet Wolverson's secretly articulating.
I just do that because it helps
I know.
Secretly says the Yankees right.
Oh. I always feel bad when I do that. It just helps me read faster.
No, word, like.
Size point font, he's like, Gordon's right. It's not on.
Yeah. Yeah, the size 4 font Wolverson's like, you know, humanism was right all along. The rest of this has been a ruse.
Black existentialism was.
Are y'all good?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can flash you down. Anthony, you good? It could all be the overview. All 9 minutes is enough.
Are we doing straight down or
We're I'm
Just
flowing
go
straight down.
We're flowing straight down, I guess.
Let's get in the game.
Y'all good? The healthcare system cannot save black women. They are more likely to die than any other group, even controlling for alternative factors. Fundamental cause of illness is social factors like environmental racism and stressors from microaggression. 40% of black women diagnosed with cancer stop going to the fucking doctor even when they believe the diagnosis because they are so exhausted from anti-black healthcare system to go back and deal with racist doctors that don't prescribe pain medication because they go with black women as drug addicts. Healing is going to be an internal net benefit to the app because only we allow black women to actually go to these material things and care for themselves. Our war and evidence articulates that anti-blackness is necessary both the psychic and physical life of whiteness. Health gets articulated through an anti-black grammar of making the black sick as a means of healing society. Henrietta Lacks he tells heal the world to cures from Husky experiments, save white lives. Modern gynecology literally carved out of the husk of black woman, which means black freedom is always antithetical to universal health, which is why the idea of breathing life into the system built from our death is exhausting burden for black women. Utopianism is a temporal break from the knowledge of the anti-black structure determines your day-to-day life by imagining an impossible world where this is not true, which gives black women a break from the world in a moment of respite that equips them with the psychological energy to mentally engage and care for themselves. Now their links are shockingly non-specific to the app, mostly to the status quo. They say ghosts already haunt this space now that the app actively creates or destroys them. If the haunting is always already going on, ask yourself why the hell the app has to be responsible for that shit. I didn't hear the word black woman once coming out of the 1NC, so you grant me a lot of leeway and have a high threshold for their attempts to contextualizing it in flip-flop because their only links are the misunderstanding of utopianism, but not competitive with the app because they have no way of contextualizing it to black women, which is the flesh through which the app is read, and the only way you can evaluate the K is if they theorize that flesh to be competitive with it. Now, the black superwoman said this app has always already been about black women and their relationship. The entire premise of the neg is saying we have left out indigeneity, forces the black woman to be the bearer of the burdens of all society. At best, our links are of a mission where we just simply don't account for them for other forms of violence. But take it as a Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. The app is never about black women being paramount to all other bodies, but instead that they are uniquely positioned and therefore you need a unique method to them to account for that matter. And they have not proven why black women carving out spaces psychologically for themselves is bad, just that AJ has failed to not do it for everyone or recognize everyone in doing so, which is how black women get forced into becoming the wet nurse of America and the superwoman who has to bear the brunt of society in their shoulders. Cross-apply the Hartman evidence. She talks about the failure scripted on the black women for their labor as both simultaneously being needed for her labor and then the work being scripted as capitulating to whiteness or producing death when she performs. The Hartman gives the example of black women going into white households as domestic laborers to make money for her family, but is demonized by her community as for being subservient to white people and then chastised as not properly producing enough if she doesn't or cannot work, which means black women are always perpetuated into a state of damned if you do, damned if you don't, which the neg has performatively done, which means you vote neg on the Hartman evidence because they have not sufficiently proven the app is a good interior. It's not a good interior method for black women to be or in and of itself. They just say it doesn't account for everyone, which is how Hartman says regardless of the direction of her labor, she will always be seen as failing, which is how the neg performatively statusizes black women's orientation to the world because they require her never to labor for herself and instead to remain in the position in the status quo as the laborer for others, which is why you will have to endorse the orientation of letting black women put down their bags to exist for themselves. I'm going to go to utopianism link here. Their utopian link is contrived. This Hardy card says that utopian narratives that desire a society that move away from nature towards features of white settler power are problematic. This is clearly not the fucking app. Our Hartman and Mercy have evidence that the black utopic demands is not one for a reformation of this world that is comfortable to the white settler, but one that demands against forms of policies or politics that are disruptive to the world itself, that makes whiteness uncomfortable when you believe blackness has infinite possibility, because white psyches cannot understand the idea of black mattering. This is our example of Haiti. The Haitian Revolution was made possible only through a utopic ethic that enabled the mass mobilization of people against colonial violence. This proves not only that the link doesn't fucking apply, but we also turn it. Utopianism is uniquely good to challenge the dominance of settler societies like French control over Haiti, but also this card is in the context of trying to achieve a utopia. That's not the app, which is why our Ziad and Revi evidence characterize it as an impossible possibility, not something you try to bring into coherence within the world, but a radical moment of non-coherence not understood in the world that allows you to come back and psychologically heal within and on the Leroy evidence. Utopianism is an attempt to banish the ghost, rather the app is that the black women are always already haunted wherever it goes. It's how they interact with the haunting, i.e. the state scripts that haunting as death has always been for black women and always will be for black women, and weaponize that haunting to tell black women they should do nothing or refuse to take care of themselves. The app, utopianism, is the methodology for how black women can engage with the haunting in the world outside of the whiteness demands of how they should. They say black women are forced to work in the revolution as a response to our Haiti example. But one, the app doesn't mandate labor, just as that some black women want to engage in revolutionary politics but don't feel as though they can, and the app provides a way of giving them the ability to. On the wholeness link, the app is not a drive for wholeness. Utopianism is unconcerned with reality, including the reality of whiteness. The utopic demand is not an attempt to become white, but to imagine a world where whiteness is irrelevant, where blackness has infinite value and is everything. That's our Ziad evidence. Now, part of utopianism is the forms of cleansing. They talk about they can't account for how blackness is overdetermined in society either, i.e. how black indigenous people, their blackness is often overdetermined. Their analysis cannot account for native violence against black people and how they articulate themselves away from blackness to affirm some level of their own humanity in society, at the point where they've conceded the libidinality claim that libidinal anti-blackness is key to non-black psyches, i.e. how natives own slaves, rape black women, or how in order to articulate themselves away from black people they can always say, yes, I am a savage, but at least I'm not a nigger. The ability to say I am not a nigger means their analysis of indigeneity or settlerism as a starting point cannot account for the violence done to black people by indigenous people, because being made necessary for them to recapture some form of wholeness of their identity. Now, perm do both. There's going to be a hydra. This that settlerism and anti-blackness may inform one another, but modernity has made them non-tangential on one another as well. Any articulation of violence done to black people that is not solely the result of settlerism or prior to it is why you vote AF on the perm, because even if they can fully win that settlerism created all anti-blackness ever, they have no reverse causal claim of how resolving it resolves the excess of anti-black violence done to black women, which is why you air AF, because if their method cannot fully encapsulate the position of black women, you vote AF because you need to both a plurality of methods and understanding to account for them, and as an accessibility term, because if they can't resolve the AF, what the fuck are they doing, and why vote neg on the non-unique discount that doesn't care to work on the violence done to black women? The next theorizes relationality to the land universally and lets black people slip through the cracks. They say the land is haunted by the native and we become settlers, and the AF should be, quote, held accountable for native genocide, but their evidence doesn't take into account the forced position of non-consensuality settlement settlers black people occupy, i.e. being brought onto the stolen land as property, not as settlers on a quest to clear the land. The world of the alternative focuses on an analysis of the native or colonizer, but can't theorize property, which is why the perm does both, to adequately understand how relation to land is not binary, settler, native, but relational, i.e. how you came to the land, whether consensual or non-consensual, how blacks were neither there to be cleared, but to be used for the clearing and to building after that clearing. Now the ballot, you should vote for. Now, I'm kind of the embedded ballot they made. You should vote for the team that does a better debating and offers a method to resolve violence. Presumption flips AF when they read a K. Black women are presumed against in the world now, which means voting neg on presumption is parasitic on black women's labor, because it tells me I haven't created enough or acted well enough, which is an impossible burden because there's no burden for this. Their K of desire also applies to them. There's no reason voting neg doesn't also invest in a fantasy that rejects the 1AC for not being perfect, model subjectivity, or rejecting the 1AC as healing the flaws of the 1AC. Voting neg means voting for them, not just a presumption, nothingness. So bad faith, and even if they characterize voting neg as just voting not voting for something directly, it means that you are always just voting toward an empty void that they do not describe at the expense of black women, which is something that should necessarily be rejected. Now, perm do the AF in all instances. The AF solves best black female flesh is key in understanding of how colonialism operates through the fungibility of her body. Post-Middle Passage land cannot exist without black women. Her flesh, her forced labor for it, the taking of it from her, and the raising of tenders of the land by her king. And 13, the making of black female slaves facilitates the production of the settler space by clearing the native land and the accumulation of property of black female functions and benefit for unending expansion and malleability. It enables the settler to imagine the world, property and sexuality and spatial constancy, and really in excess of the post of the protected black female bodies and the parent that the disorganization, settler colonialism, and landscapes for the new grammar in which they theorize the presence of black bodies in settler colonial nation states. And being implicated in colonialism doesn't mean life or freedom, but a tool of infinitely shifting fungibility. Anti-blackness is a prior conceptual necessity to settler colonial knowledge. King M14. Labor becomes the mode of incorporating non-black people into the settler colonial relations. The whole hope for black inclusion into the human do not explain the ontological state of blackness. Black laboring bodies have been being used to build the southern nation. However, black labor is just one of a kind within the infinite repertoire of practices and making the black flesh fungible with the infinite possibilities of fungible black flesh. Mark a fundamental distinction between the fungible slave body and the non-black body theories, and they attempt to triangulate blackness and settler native antagonism and do nothing to position blackness as the labor force that helps make the settler landscape possible. This obscures the issue of black fungibility and reduces blackness as a mere tool for settlement rather than a constitutive element of the settler colonial conceptual order. Black fungible bodies are the conceptual and discursive fodder through which the settler master can even be things the spatial expansion in the space of the practices require the production of black flesh. Mark the card of flesh. And indigenous people may be antagonistic to whiteness, but they are also antagonistic to blackness because of their subjective capacity for non-blackness. Wilderson in 16th section critiques the error of the generosity toward Native people. He's right, there's a conflict between Native people and Europeans, but a non-antagonism between blacks and Central Native American society. When the whites ideal code over the past, mark the cultural name of the identity within the position of the Indian, so they stand in an antagonistic relationship with black society. These interracial marriages by making sure the black Mayor White encourages Indians and Mayor White American is absolute commitment to black, and in the South Dakota you have to a large reservation. Mark the card of reservation.
So there's kind of this argument that like Native people get access to some benefit that like Black people don't get access to. Your rule description literally just cites interracial marriage. Do you think there's anything else that Indians get like as being part of humanity that Black people? Can you list them?
Yeah, 100%. Wilderson gives that one example. I mean, we'll read more evidence about other examples.
I don't want a theorization. I want to know the material things that you think Native people get that Black people don't get.
Material things like the idea of being able to be seen as human, to articulate yourself.
What does that mean? Like, that's an abstract thing. What does that mean to be seen as human?
Okay, like materially and politically, the imbuing of rights.
What does that mean? That's not an answer. You just said they're seen as human.
Do you want me to finish the question?
I want you to answer
There's
it.
examples in the card of different legal rights and voting rights.
What are those?
Voting rights, marriage rights.
Okay, voting rights,
sexual
marriage
rights, reproductive
What
rights.
is sexual and reproductive rights? What does that mean?
Right. So like when there were laws on the books about homosexuality, natives weren't locked up as much as black people were because of it was seen
So
as
homosexuality is not as criminalized. Anything else?
I mean, I was gonna explain more in detail to that, but like if you're gonna ask us if it's like just contextualize the 5 examples, no. But I can give you as many examples as you want.
Sure.
Got a few questions. You say we don't theorize property. What constitutes property?
Right, we think that the property-commodity relationship changed post-Middle Passage. It was an idea of something like you could contain or buy and sell, but that was something that was distinctly not human. Blackness kind of occupied a space of human and then subhuman, where they became the property exchange. Like relative ability to articulate yourself within humanity.
Relative. What does it mean to articulate yourself within humanity?
To kind of like, our conception of humanity and ontology is something that's not moving from whiteness, makes you more deviant, but moving from blackness that makes you able to affirm yourself, right? So anything that is not black is enfolded into the human. Because Wilderson argues it's not about a deviant from a white face, but a deviation from blackness, which is always at the bottom that you found value off of.
Okay, I have this question about your last piece of Wilderson. Indicates that Apache marks a cultural name of an identity. Is culture a constituent factor of humanity?
No, it's just one aspect.
But is it an important aspect, right?
Sure.
So in the context of people in Africa, right, are they human or non-human? They have access to culture. Or is it that the visual scheme of slavery overdetermines it?
Both.
Both are, wait.
Oh, sorry.
I
no.
said are they human or non-human?
Sorry, no, they're non-human. Slavery does overdetermine that shit, but if you're gonna argue that like black people have jazz and therefore they have culture, so
No,
they
I'm
know
talking about
that.
Africa. Like, does the visual schema overdetermine
We
their
think like
culture?
obviously different things operate between Africa and black people in America, but there is still that kind of coding of Africans as property post-Middle Passage. Like there's no
And so it's
distinction
based
now.
on a visual schema in that instance?
Not just a visual schema, but like cultural and property relation.
But how does cultural property relations say someone that immigrated from Africa now?
Like what happens to a person that immigrates from Africa to
Just in
America?
the context of your theory, are they
They're still
human or not?
perceived as non-human in America too,
Okay.
because of like anti-blackness isn't a space or social isolate.
Cool. We got 10. Take it now. basically the top of the, top of the 2AC. We'll just go straight down from there.
Oh, cool.
Yep. I'm just going to signpost which argument I'm answering along the way.
Everyone okay?
Yeah, I already know. That's always the recommendation anyway. I mean, yeah, cool. Everyone good? Tom, they say that healthcare can't solve black women, but you don't solve this either. The quality of utopianism is just a momentary energetic break, but there's no material link to how much of a break is necessary to resolve this type of medicalized violence. Furthermore, it does not resolve the racism or the lack of care access that their evidence already highlights. They don't solve. They say that only black women cause of their health care writ large, but our argument here is that we'll link turn this argument that you have not adequately, you continue to reinvest in the same benefits that cause black violence and make it a constituent necessary of the situation of whiteness that's going to be later down. They say utopia is a break from the burnout of the world. This is going to be false. I'm going to do this more. The link arguments there. This is contextualized there. Winning of the utopianism is good arguments. I'll do later on. They say those are already haunted. They have to already haunted. This is going to be the one in our. They say when you contextualize the black woman, I think it's already contextualized, but I'll do that in the one on the link debate as well. They say the black superwoman decided. This assumes that we have links of omission that say that black women need to carry us. Our argument is rather that you have invested in metaphysics that are fundamentally violent to black women and rescript the very same problems that you attempt to solve. There is literally no link to this argument that says that we have not proven that their argument is bad. That's going to be the link debate. The next argument here is that the Hartman argument conscripted two arguments here. First is that this links to the war and Moore's not man's debate. It causes me to reject blindness evidence that criminalizes black women who have to care for their children and same forms of violence that are required in order for them to perform for survival. Second argument is the version of evidence means they claim to struggle for liberation and mechanisms of redress that exactly fall into the things that Hartman is talking about. They say that they don't make a demand that black women have to labor, but they think that that's an option. Argument is that you have made a claim that does not just enter into a neutral world that is perfectly fiatly implemented, rather has a practical way that it gets entered into a symbolic order. You have conceded the psychoanalysis works. You took any full weight here on the way that the social overdetermines and scripts the way that that their practice gets taken. Also, this is already in line with their theorization when they say that blackness overdetermines the nature of blackness. Don't let them shift any kind of like psychoanalysis isn't really true arguments. You are already fundamentally in line with this. Furthermore, your Wilson and Warren absolutely cite psychoanalysis as a way in order to understand how blackness means any next of this are going to be new in the 1AR and in contradiction to their evidence. The next argument here is the vote Apple Hartman evidence. So we're going to do that on the reject utopia argument. This utopia is bad. It's not about the Apple argument. Is that your frame of utopia is particularly bad. So I'm going to do the link debate here. First is link framing. Photo the links books Young and Henderson evidence for four implications. First debate is also in the libido activity. That's just investing about imagine and evaluate possible worlds and absent projects necessarily require libido catexis and participating in this fantastic project. The affirmative increases libido investment in genocide. This means it's not non-unique because their specific investment is unique, as with the valid and B is B concerned with the affirmative side. Down with the admit there are an infinite number of ways to communicate meaning, but the unconscious reveals itself in the ways we decide to enunciate our statements. This means you don't have the ability to weigh any sort of we change the meaning arguments. The C is signifying change. Every word in a sentence changes the meaning of all the words before it. Every sentence changes the meaning of all the sentences in the paragraph before it. Every paragraph changes the meaning of every paragraph in the article before it. Hold them to the unspoken words which haunt the text. And now D is every link is a solvency. Take out the settler and the master may be distinct historical subjects, but they are still the same ontological subject. Every link we witness settler colonialism is a link to anti-blackness, which means they reinvest in the same system which produced their impacts. The links I'm going to go for four. The first is utopianism. You should question why the word utopia is in the 1AC at all. If it's not in any of their evidence, it's because unconsciously the affirmative operates through that lens. Utopia, the place of no place, only functions as a form of terror. No place imagine any space that can be filled with our dreams, hopes, desires, mirroring the settler desire for infinite expansion and being, but also raise that very form of cruel optimism in which black women are constantly re-energized through fantasy to labor for something their own warrant evidence says they cannot achieve. If the point is just so that black women go to the doctor, they experience the very same thing which makes them tired and de-energized in the first place. And this is just a perpetual cycle of violence that never ends. They'll make a sort of burnout argument, but we'll link turn that rather than finding ways to live in gratuitous violence. The affirmative creates a resentment-driven moment that strives for its impossible object, a filling in of the lack. That since it constantly fails, must find someone to blame. This is shown in the way in which queer black people got called out for the way in which when queer black people called out Erica Garner or Sandra Bland's homophobia or transmisogyny, there was backlash that they were fracturing the movement and making the community look bad. The second impact of this is the cynical nihilism of the affirmative. Their warrant evidence already acknowledges the impossibility of each utopia, but they strive for it anyway. It falls back on the warrant's arguments about the struggle for struggle's sake, which not only produces burnout, but also reveals the way there's unconscious force at work with the affirmative is already where they can't achieve utopia, but strive for it anyway. That is young and hardy. Now, B is futurity. The wills of history begin with the first need of a slain. The investment futurity is a fat house called which the future to come, maybe, but never the present. Time is not neutral, rather slays the name is past. The affirmative makes multiple investments in reality. Here are some quotes. Quote, revolutionary time allows for the unexplained potential of every moment to be reanimated. A dialectical image catches some potential and contains it. waiting for the moment, bless you, in which it can be seen again for what it is. Revolutionary time has never left the place of possibility rather than trying to contain its norms and hierarchies. Quote from Mirzoff, quote, Roediger defines revolutionary time as a cycle time of liberation, of abolition, and mechanisms of redress. Quote from Mirzoff, this is not a radical break with the humanist politics and morality. It's just an elastic deformation that means the same metaphysics of the settler master, never leaving the place of possibility, liberation, mechanisms, redress. He talked about discourses of a radical anti-humanism that makes white people uncomfortable, that their own warrant evidence would call them out for, rather is a re-scripting the very same ideologies that the settler endorses, which throws the hopes into the future rather than to alleviate the past, not only charges the kind of resentment future never comes to impacts that I've done in the utopia argument, but also creates a reinvestment in the social colonial and metaphysics hidden in the roots of revolution, which captures revolutionaries who have already left such discourses behind back into the metaphysics of violence, rather than call for revolutionary time. You should prefer the non-time of the native of genocide and slavery, which call not for a future to come, for liberation, freedom, to dwell, and the radical nothingness that shatters all rubrics of time and divest from the possibility of this endless violent cycle of violence. Now see us, anti-ontology. We are theorizing lens of anti-ontology, not anti-ontology. The Indian is not the human of whiteness, nor the non-human of blackness, rather the ontological material which the dialectics of subject and object, master and slave take place. The theorization of their born ever necessary proffers is one that must either locate the native in humanity or blackness as this way blackness is the only overwhelming side of violence, thus ontological violence often performed upon the native, describing the other side of affirmation, negation, describing the native as the human, bemoaning the loss of land, lineage, language, and culture. The native becomes forces of self and colonial regimes of property, governance, humanity, which is a violent form of misrecognition, ontologically shorting the native, reforming its closure from both meaning and non-meaning. That is Smith and Leroy. Now D is fullness of the other. The affirmative imagine they lack in contradistinction to the other who is full and attempts to remedy that lack to move towards mothering and love and utopianism, and then imagining the other to be full. The subject can still approximate the other must possess something the subject lacks. This is proven in the way their evidence theorizes whiteness is full rather than a depth-driven attempt to cover up a fundamental lack, which is shown in the way they're born and Brady evidence and failing to achieve wholeness through approximation because wholeness is fundamentally impossible. The subject locates the cause of failure in themselves. This reinscribes anti-blackness of the colonial violence in two ways. The first is that it imagines the settler master is full, creating desire to achieve that state with at least what kind of narcissism phenomenon describes a black skin white mass producing hatred of itself, shown in the way in which white women are constantly held in terms of self-hatred and contradistinction to white beauty. The second is that since the film blackness is fundamentally possible, move separate from Santama as the project never comes to wholeness. That is George. The next argument is that this type is the black women are always called haunted. The utopia, this would be the one and R. They say Haiti. There are black women. Two arguments here. First is that Haiti did not fucking solve. They are still massively in debt, still owned by the French because they have debt to them. And three, there's massive NGOs right now that are taking Haiti's ability to control its own economy. This is the ruse of analogy that their argument creates. This says that things have gotten better when it mystifies violence. The next argument here is that this is attempt to imagine as good I have impact from above. They say black indigenous people, there's a distinction between nativeness and blackness. I'll do that work here because they're going to go for theirs. They are black indigenous people. It's not the same as native defined by genocide. Genocide, slavery are fundamentally different ontological positions as far as ontological trajectories of their violence, while both groups have undergone periods of history in which they've been legally enslaved or massacred in droves. The point of anti-blackness is to maintain the fungibility, accumulation, and service of any production of slaves, which not only labor for war, but for service. The point of contradiction which humanity defines of the contrast. The point of genocide is to clear the natives of the ground for ontological taxonomy of blackness and humanity can solidify. In other words, you always want more slaves, but you want to get rid of Indians. This is the difference. Is the reason the only way that theorization can accomplish there's not permutation, because it's the reason why anti-blackness is not a sufficient rubric of theorization, which explains the totality of violence and anti-violence, disciplines the endless production of black flesh and settlers and moves towards the elimination and ectocorpus of the native. The next argument here is they say that by Indians are anti-black, yes, in the way that Buffalo Soldiers or Bacon's Rebellion or any number of ways which black people experiencing the violence of natives does exist, but our argument is not that they have access to humanity. Because of this, there's always the ruse that says, hey, if you participate in the violence against the other, you will achieve humanity. Yes, this never comes, though. Their argument assumes that it can. The next argument is the permutation. All the links to the permutation here, too, is that the alternative is literally reject the app, so I don't think the permutation exists, and all the links are links to the permanence so far as the operators of the same metaphysics. They say accessibility, just like we've already done, not links above why it's also black women. They say it's the type of position of rationality can't theorize property. The Smith evidence already resolved this argument as well. The Leroy evidence already says that we can accomplish your theory, but you can't accomplish ours. They say black is used for settlement argument of this work above. They say you should presume that this is irrelevant because our argument is that the affirmative is fundamentally violent and does not solve. The next argument is the cave desire applies here. No, we are not attempting to heal, but rather dwell within the cracks that are produced by genocide. The next argument is that permutation do happen. This is fundamentally farcical and maintains the same violence and does not solve any of the affirmative. The King evidence goes negative and literally says that there's non-black and non-indigenous people in size 4 font is not able to be explained by labor. The King evidence also says that yes, blackness is part of the process of settlement. Our Leroy evidence already concedes this. Rather says that you have invested in violent metaphysics that maintain settlerism and anti-blackness. The next argument is Indians are antagonistic. This assumes sovereignty, which is all their Wilderson evidence is based on, which is not the affirmative. And secondly, all these arguments are, this assumes that inclusion and exclusion are always, and inclusion is always good and exclusion always bad. This is a mistheorization. Inclusion for Indians is genocide, which is why interracial marriage is fundamentally violent, because it rescripts the native into forms of property and governance and relationality of the human.
Are you good?
Give me 1 second.
Whew.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess I'm gonna work my way backwards.
Sure.
So one of the arguments you made was there is no alternative to permits, reject the app, but then like 2 sentences later you said the alternative is to dwell within the cracks of genocide, which is it?
Yeah, so I think those two things are the same.
They are the same? Okay.
Yeah, I think, well, the reason is that I think that refusing the app is key to be able to kind of not get lured into the ruse of humanism.
What does it look like to dwell within genocide then?
Yeah, a couple things here. One, I think the link debates that we do above on the way that like your utopianism is violent is kind of an example of how that takes place at the material level, right? The constant refusal of these ideas that's like the future's gonna come, things are gonna get better, when that really just brings us back into systems of violence that are bad for us and create the burnout where like people are contradicting in the first place. I think in the context of the debate round, right, it's like the judges shouldn't affirm something that reinvests in the metaphysics of anti-blackness and settler colonialism. That would be bad.
At the point where you're making an argument that settler colonialism is everywhere, how do we know that the neg doesn't inevitably reinvest in that?
Yeah, so 2 answers here. First, you have to win a link that says that we do. I don't think you've done
No,
that.
I'm asking.
2.
No,
Yeah.
it's not about a question of a link. You said it's inevitable and it's everywhere.
Right.
So if it's
there are some
inevitable and
dis-
everywhere, doesn't that mean it's already the neg?
No, so a couple answers here. The first is that yes, is there some degree of constant liberal investment in anti-blackness and socialism?
Okay.
Sure, but the intensity of that investment is distinctual. We can invest more or less. Like,
Okay,
for example,
cool.
someone could be like, hey, Reagan is good.
Yeah,
It's
cool,
different
cool,
than
cool.
being like,
Okay,
Trump is
you
Satan.
said that the app is a form of covering up the lack. What lack does the app try to cover, and how do you get to diagnose that? How do you come to that diagnosis?
Yeah, couple answers here. So first, what is that lack? The large concession of our healing warrants that there's a constituent lack that is introduced in the heart of being due to language. So for example, without language, you can't name an object that does not exist in front of you. It's only after you have a symbolic code that you can be like, there is a thing in front of me that is not there. You need language to articulate absence. The second argument here is that the way that the affirmative diagnoses it is, I think, through the analysis of the way that you have articulated your politics. Our argument isn't like you're a neurotic in some type of like, I don't know, clinical sense. We rather think that you don't grapple with the way that the libidinal economy shapes desire and the way that people enter
Okay,
that
so
economy.
it's just a question of did the app perform an analysis of the libidinal economy in the 1AC?
No. Our argument is like, yeah, the app has made an analysis of the libidinal economy. Our argument is that the app has not fully grappled with how much the libidinal economy, A, overdetermines and means that your project gets solved, B, your investment is fundamentally violent, and C, the way in which your realization fails because
Another
it's not grappled with
question, you
argument.
gave like a 4-point analysis on like the Young evidence. It was like you have to hold the app to what we said, not what we meant, and then it said the judges need to read between the lines of the text. So
It
which
did
is
not
it?
say that. So the 2 things I said is that you should be concerned with the affirmative said, not what they meant, because
Yeah.
there are a number of ways to enunciate statements, so the unconscious reveals itself from what we said to say.
Sure.
And then the second one is that we should hold you to the unspoken words on the text. So for example,
Yeah,
you
what
don't
is
read
the
word-
unspoken words?
Yeah, so for example, you didn't read the word non-indigenous in the King evidence, right? Or just because you didn't read the line in the Merznoff evidence.
How does that
literally
not
describes-
equally apply to you when I didn't hear black woman once
So
in the
you
one
can
in
make
C?
an argument that the text of our
No, I
negative
did,
is
but
bad,
okay.
So like, that's an argument.
I'm gonna send out the one card on you. It's gonna be all stuff at the top. And not all this one.
Wait, I'm sorry, what'd you say it is?
It's alt at the top and then straight up.
Okay. Damn.
Smart.
You have to do it in real time. That's why I'm glad I'm a good judge and you all take.
I mean, no one better than affirmation, yeah, honestly. LOL, one time I was judging a high school round, and they're like, I like your shirt, and I was like, cool, and they're like, I was afraid to tell you earlier because I didn't want you to be like, stop sweet talking the judge, and I was like, who is judging high school debate that's like, my ego is so moved by this high schooler? and I'm like, I'm voting for him.
People actually try to do that though.
I
They
think
actually
that's
think
what-
like, if I butter up the judge a little bit, and I'm just like, I'll clown Ryan.
Some of the people I am closest to have consistently voted me down. Like, no, it's true. Shanera used to vote me down all the time last year. We got better. We tried to improve.
That's how you know you can trust.
Right. That's
Say you lost, you lost.
They also tend to be harder on you because they're like, you can do better. Jacob, is there?
And I'm gonna think.
It's not the one.
that was Darius's thing. One time he voted against this anti-blackness team on framework, and they got really mad at him. He was like, "Can't have you going around making an argument that makes this argument look bad. We need to work to be stronger together." I thought that was that really informed my government philosophy moving forward too. So, yeah.
I don't have anything on the ballot.
That's a fair argument.
You mind if I just put this?
I don't
in
care
the
who
box?
wins.
Because I can read it on.
I just need to see.
Yeah, but people
I just don't wanna make
be
fun
like,
of Josh.
I'm
No,
gonna
no, I
do
totally
it by,
understand.
like,
Just-
and I think they're just as mad at me. I was like,
I'm like, I have like way too many votes.
Omar was mad at us when we debated each other. He was just mad at us.
Who?
Omar.
oh, was he mad at us?
He was
He
mad.
just not believe us.
It was just, he didn't want anyone to win. He was like, Gabby, you won, but I hate your argument. You lost, but I loved your argument, and I'm mad. And I'm like, I'm sorry.
Oh, and I didn't speak in that round at all, apparently.
Yeah, no.
That's not.
Where you going, Frank? What, all 10 of the top, the 9 close shakedown. I'll respond to something about what's the flag.
You okay? Oh, you just look like you were. I'm good. Oh.
I have a lollipop. Yeah. You want it?
The blood sugar will get him through.
Right.
Wow, that might be. No, those
Blood
lollipops.
sugar off, blood sugar off.
I thought I had a granola bar in my backpack.
Oh, I have a bunch of fruit leathers.
I don't smell the fruit.
Wait, at all? Like none of fruit?
Like, no,
What about like fruit flavors?
That's wild as fuck.
That's a good idea.
You want this? You want fruit and nuts? It's a bar. Here, take 2. Also, but I'm still wild that you were like, I don't fuck with like no fruit. Not even like apples? Like what?
I feel like an orange and grape.
No fruit. That can't be.
Apple, I don't know. Okay. I'm sorry.
Not answering this specific young evidence means you should understand refusal a politics unfitting that stills instead of trying to fill in the absence in the archive by building utopian ethics that imagines new political futures, but instead a project that politicizes the absence as a constituent aspect that destabilizes our archive. Our young evidence describes the way in which they assume the archives were based on catachresis, which just means the assumption that inclusion destabilizes a concept. So to say that in that context, so to say it's everything is a dog destabilizes the concept of dog. The affirmative in this context understands that it to be or the archive includes revolutionary time, black women's voices, i.e. the Brady evidence, which says we need an acoustics of suffering into the archive that will somehow destabilize how ethnography and relationships of black suffering related to. There's a few problems with A, is their meta-studies arguments, is the creation of ethnographic as it identifies a systematic review of a published database, which is A, literally using the basis of a current archive through peer review publishing to make a judgment by analyzing statistics to understand it within a coherent grammar. This is a double turn with their Brady evidence, which A says Anna Brown was not murdered by particular people of whiteness, but subjectivity itself, which means A, they misdiagnosed the way in which it's constituted, which means they A, have double turned themselves, but also is that using the basis of the current archive to constitute. This means their understanding the archive creates a fundamental terror knowledge that must A, constantly accrue more studies to create a scientific grammar for how violence happens. There's a few implications. This first is it means you should not understand their utopia through just a pure affirmation, i.e. inability to rewrite the archive, but the way in which that becomes coded by ethnography, the way in which that constituently invests to logical terror knowledge, i.e. if we win all of our lack arguments, it should frame how you understand the archive. The archive both creates and destroys that it's while it's being constructed, which means their politics becomes an extension of the archive. This intervention means it creates more research about black people, i.e. the way in which Williams, who is the second author, is a non-black person studying black people, which is the kind of thesis or argument says that in the context of spectrality and refusal, you should understand ghosts both as spiritual, but also the way in which the politicization of absence, the way in which the archives absence reveals more. So in the context, let's take the example of Brady. What would have happened if Anna Brown's voice was heard and she was taken into the operating room? Would that have changed to the fact that surgeons are more likely to give her subpar surgery? This assumption papers shows the way in which their own Brady evidence says that she was not murdered by a particular person or even by the medical system, but subjectivity itself, which means there are plantics of understanding medicalization not requiring blood. That misses the point, which is the conceitual argument. This creates a distinct implication of both their capacity to solve, but also the way in which their mirrors of evidence is in a direct attempt to cohere the body around a future temporal politics. There are multiple examples of this in Double Turn. The addressing the entirety of mirrors of evidence says revolutionary time is a cyclical time of liberation, of abolition of mechanisms of redress, and then goes even further to say that reparations are as spiritual as well as an economic demand, a repairing of life, which all assume the same narrative arc of redemption that their errands evidence impact turns, it says, is the production of temporal capture. That says there's a notion of wholeness or reparative possibility through reparations, abolition, or redress, which means your understanding of utopia cannot be just viewed through their Hartman evidence, because the one I see is a holistic understanding that manifests itself. Argument this turns the act in two ways. First, in the constitutes a form of lash out, which is described in the 2AC, which they define someone to blame or why the reparation of life must have failed. This can take the blame of blaming minority populations or any groups, any intramural argument, which turns as the utopia never comes and collapses on itself. This also it implicates your capacity to win this destabilizing or disturbing white people argument, because it creates a fundamentally masochistic relationship, which evidence says that we need to make white people or settlers become uncomfortable. This is seen in a few places. First, there's item brings evidence that says white people's helpfulness in the movement are in spite of their whiteness, which is the same narrative of overcoming, which in the same where people can re-articulate themselves along particular ethics and action, which shapes their ethical situation. But even more so is that white people should just disappear from government, just leave their assigned roles and leave to empty, which is the fantasy of whiteness that allows them to disappear from the system, i.e. how people get enjoyment from thinking through white genocide, i.e. the way in which Cicero Meyer is able to cohere himself around that, but then simultaneously solidifies the position of whiteness insofar as that destabilization is always incomplete, especially when their mirrors of evidence literally says colonial slavery was abolished as a temporal claim, and even more proven by their Williams and Mohammed evidence, which says we understand racism through an ideology of inferiority and superiority, which ignores the way in which hypermasculinity is coded to particular bodies and justified, which means they're analytic fields, but their Collins evidence even defends individual consciousness as an explanation for how you changing, i.e. hearing people or descripting is the production of new political futures, which means you are still invested in. Their first argument that I'm answering is the ghosts. They say the ghosts are already here. This isn't a responsive argument. It's not just you have to tune yourselves to ghosting the concepts, but the way in which the presence and the absence articulates the grammar by which their understanding is understood. The second argument, they say utopia lets black women talk to ghosts. Third arguments. First is it doesn't resolve any of our link arguments for the nature of politicization of absence. It also understands ghosts in the future anterior can only be understood in the utopia, but not as the ghost is the constituent factor of existence. Their understanding of culture as the capacity of humanity, either wilderness evidence double turns the majority of their arguments, because they said African people are not human because the visual schema over-determines them, even if they have a claim to culture, which is a distinct double turn from Wilderson's theorization about nativeness that says the capacity for culture makes them human, which is a tension, but also their nature of their argument that says that we make them describe everything and result the systems of colonialism. Complicity is not the same thing. King and 13. During our talking circles, we thought our interwoven histories and experiences ongoing black settlement participants that Netherlands and maintenance to sell local leadership of property in Canada, U.S. discuss also discuss histories of black and slavery by civilized in southern portion of Toronto with the current anti-black racism existed by Native nations. Society Toronto was report which people with large load of domination use blacks to carry out genocide. Native people use Native people participate in discourse material construction black bodies and bodies used for the accumulation capital. So moving towards a new vision for some way relate one how we live on the planet. One can see that groups of people forcibly transcended their lands and enslaved on peoples and Africans were in the Americans did not make enslaved people true settlers. Nevertheless, blacks have involved in some forced settlement process. I do not agree with the words of black people represent those becoming settlers.
How much time do we have?
7:39.
doesn't know how to follow me yet.
Okay, let this one read this speech, because he's like, I already for it.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Rudy's the crankiest white you'll meet.
Alright.
Straight down.
So it's straight down, exact block order.
Okay.
Starting with 2 and C. Alright.
Nice.
We're ready to go. Black and women with swamped with images of negativity, nihilism, now to 47% of black women rather die than go back to a doctor after getting a cancer diagnosis. Utopianism is a temporal break from the knowledge that anti-blackness determines your every day-to-day life by imagining a possible world which is not true. Black women are cared for, which gives black women a moment of respite, their quest of psychological energy to mentally re-engage and care for the world. Their first arguments that utopianism is the result of literal structures of the world, and that isn't necessary because our arguments are the way they say the psychic capture happens in the first place. I half of black women would rather die than engage in things that they know are good because the psyche is over-inundated with negative images of the world. Any sort of break from the world is necessarily a good thing because it's a linear sort of solvency that we have to win. We don't have to win that we resolve the conditions of racism, just the sort of psychic capture that causes that violence in the very first place. Next argument I'm going to go for is their answer to the piece of Harvard evidence with the unconscious. Their argument about reading into the conscious and reading past the utopia, i.e. the words that we made, the words that Gabby said, but did not read in the part of the when he see links are all for arguments of scripting black women because it's not separate from the labor about which you understand black women in the very first place. This is a piece of worn evidence that's fantastic. The psychoanalysis, the definition to wellness articulated through an anti-black pathology and defined in opposition to black women against how definitions like sickness, like psychiatric disorders, are defined in opposition to black women, which means that form of scripting we have an impact on it because their ability to psychoanalyze the app, i.e. tell Gabby, I know, understand what's in your unconscious better what you are saying, pathologizes the app of mental sickness and tries to cure that, but those diagnoses are always over-scripting onto blackness and necessarily valid. Williamson says psychoanalysis is good, yes, you understand the non-black psyche, but when applied to black people from non-black people, it's always dangerous and cannot be disimbricated from the figure of the blackest criminal in the very first place. The next argument is the utopia. This idea to the alternative because the negative traffics and the negative images of the world refusal isn't utopic but dystopic because black women refusing the world now by choosing to die rather than to live. They need something to come after the refusal, something to live for. Only the app provides that method between black women's death is a dissent to the alternative, even when all their arguments after the world, the method, the app is necessary internal link turns, they're all because absent black utopians, so black indigenous people are left behind, which is an independent dissent because the alt is utopic. It tells people to refuse to mean they invest in the conditions of native death in the very first place. The next argument I'm going to go for is the superwoman dissent, which they fundamentally can see, which a black women are seen as constantly producing to solve the problems of the world. So impossible word and settler colonialism exists now in the psyche of the world in the settler imago. They don't have explanatory power for why black women engage in complicity in settler colonialism. We explain why they engage in humanism, which is temporal capture. We look for sort of temporal quick fixes, i.e. things to resolve the sort of way that anti-blackness happens on them. This is not removing their complicity, but saying that they need to, you need to have a method to have them to resolve the temporal capture, why they're engaging in the recuperative humanism in the first place. This answers the king evidence. Complicity should not be considered if you don't have a uniqueness question about black women generating those structures. If black women saying something colonialist does not cause an indigenous person to die, but only we have a method through utopianism to resolve the conditions why they're invested metaphysically in the forms of violence. The impact to their links is very minimal, but the impact to our impact terms are necessarily much stronger because calling a black person a racist slur has greater impact than a black woman calling an indigenous person something not good in the first place. Their next argument about cruel optimism doesn't make sense because utopianism is not a form of labor. It stops the form of labor by redirecting labor towards the self away from the world in the first place. They say they fill in the left because you blame queer people. There's no reason. This is the apathy. After the frustration of the complete subject, you never get the utopia in the first place, which means that the only thing that ever happens is they sort of break away from the world. Imagine something possibly different. They see the futurity evidence, but the time you should read all their evidence in the context of the app, not a random quote. The radical time is one of that is not off this world, not something that moves with settlerism, or in the first place, the rules of revolution argument doesn't make any sense because it's not because there was before Haiti, there was unproductive time, which means there's not necessarily a telos that leads to revolution, but something that people want to engage to in the first place. The black woman, which means that the app doesn't necessarily make them do that. The fullness of the other argument doesn't make any sense. The app utopianism is a world in which blackness has infinite value, not a rejection of whiteness or a white genocide, but a world in which whiteness does not have any sort of impact on people's work in the world. If the one argument is true that white people always necessarily exist in the first place, that's assumed by Zeta Rigby evidence, which indicates that you should have not an anti-whiteness or a pro-whiteness, but a simple forgetting of whiteness because the necessity of making whiteness and colonize. It's the psyche of black people. They see that Haiti evidence fails. We don't defend a literal Haitian revolution is getting better, but proof that more resisting temporal capture can cause people to radicalize and sort of reclaim agency of the world. They say that native blackness argument. I'm going to sit here in the first place. They say they want the slave to get rid of the Indian. They get rid of the slaves necessarily as accumulation. Even as you accumulate them, you get rid of them, which is why you had 80 years of lynching where one person was killed every single day. Indigeneity also exists in the U.S., which means they're kind of are completely erased in the very first place. So go to the permutation debate. Permutation do both. You should read the perm through our king evidence, and the choice is better than their evidence. Their evidence just says theories of anti-blackness need to understand how colonialism operates. One, if that's true, the perm resolves that by combining their analytic with the method of utopianism with the act. Two, our king evidence from the later part of their thesis. It says that making a black woman a slave facilitates the clearing of indigeneity because black woman is a symbolic figure that enables the imaginative expansion of land and property as concepts. So black women embody ownership in the flesh, which is mapped onto land. The taking of land is general, only possible once the multicultural world could come to an agreement that the constitutes of people in Africa would not have a right to their land, which is mapped onto the rest of the world. The foundation of property roots itself in the possibility for subjects to be non-property owners. So it takes art in Africa. The historical analysis doesn't answer our arguments, that arguments that the middle passage foundationally changes symbolic structure of what you read settler colonialism in the first place. The net benefit is a hydrate said, which means any access to settler colonialism they can't explain. It means the net benefit to the app in the first place. They're arguing about I'll go to the permutation. They're all rejecting the app doesn't make any sense because it means that you can reject parts of the app, still endorse utopianism as a good method, which is the permutation do both those establish in the 2AC. There are the legal evidence arguments and inclusion good, but it's better than being black, i.e. the legal recognition of interracial marriage, protected people saying that being given school access, well, black people were killed for trying to go to that marriage, killed for trying to go to schools. You can be less than human, but still be above the anti-human, which is why there's structural different positionalities between blackness and nativeness in the first place, which answers the anti-ontology argument. Not saying the native is the human because that misrecognition isn't something that's good, but it's better than being fucking black, which is their argument that their non-blackness gives them sort of material benefits, i.e. who gets to live in what place, who gets to move where, who gets to marriage who, all are questions that are determined by us. Now the one in our arguments, they say the absent inclusion of black women, that's answered above. The absent inclusion of black women's voices within the world, but utopianism is one in which black women are cared for, which is something necessarily impossible, i.e. a sign that cannot make any sense to the world. Their archive argument used to understand the info from the archive to move beyond it, i.e. Wilderson uses historical examples to make larger structural claims and access of the app, not scientism that relies on need more research for the app. You should read the app and the whole of the app and moves beyond this towards utopianism. They see the Brady evidence, the app's not inclusion based on imagination because you never get to utopianism. That was people have the verse of evidence. You didn't read a part of the card said reparations good, so you shouldn't blame us for that happening in the very first place. The whites come for good argument. I answered that with the Zion Rigby evidence. It's not about white people disappearing, but remaining, giving the power to black people. Zion said it's impossible to have white people exist in the first place, so utopianism is simply a non-conservative way. It's not an anti-whiteness. They say the culture argument. Our argument is that the culture gives people existence, but the recognition of the culture marked difference, which is why black culture is something that's necessarily erased, but indigenous culture can be allowed for sort of flourishing, i.e. the recognition of different sort of indigenous holidays in the first place. Now the only other argument that we have to win is that they have flattened indigeneity and blackness, which necessarily is parasitic on black existence, which means that their flattening is literally equal violence or invest in a form of violence that is necessarily anti-black, which is something that you should reject because it maintains the killability of black women for the life of indigenous people, which black women don't have the capacity to do to indigenous people.
We have 7:38. Oh wait, okay. We will take that now. everything is status nonsense. You've considered all the words in the paragraph or article act upon each other in order to produce a meaning, and if that meaning is not something we determine, but rather something overdetermined by the symbolic order, we don't script utopia, but our argument is that utopia is already scripted, and the affirmative and the affirmation of it produces violence. Furthermore, even if they win this argument, you can still vote negative because they produce the metaphysics of humanism, which produce their impacts. Third argument here is that the scripting set assumes the possibility they'd be able to shift the symbolic order, which is not something they have conceded needed to have the capacity to do. Next argument is utopianism. This argument is just that utopianism is good to claim we ignore black and indigenous people. Two responses. First, if we win the utopianism argument, then utopia only this isn't good. And two is we don't ignore black indigenous people just because the difference between natives and blackness and how black indigenous people get scripted. That'll be later down. Superman this assumes we're going for a link of omission or blaming for colonialism. Generally, our argument is that we have specific links to the affirm which show how to invest in anti-black and subcolonial violence. And as someone who is presenting a method for change, you are responsible for the efficacy of that method and its effects, which is not a radical statement for debate. The black and natives argument, they have conceded that their theory of power is fundamentally wrong because it assumes that inclusion is always good. Their argument assumes exclusion is death, but it doesn't realize that native inclusion is death. The interracial marriage laws are part of genocide inclusion in the nation. They'd be a voting rights or whatever scripts the native into the same legal mechanisms of humanist logics that destroy this. They also can see that black people and native people, yes, participate in each other's violence, but this does not mean it either has the capacity for humanist or even recognition. Their articulation of native cultures recognizes vacuous, but no examples. Our argument is that the culture only gets recognized insofar as the settler scripts it into what is understandable to settler metaphysics, but is never indigenous. And the last argument I'm going to go for here is that this argument is fundamentally asinine and does not matter, because if we win a link to settler colonialism, that is also a link to anti-blackness, which means even if we lose this argument, winning a link is a sufficient turn to the affirmative. Now, the next argument is the permutation of Leroy Smith and King. How does this mean we don't? We already encompass your arguments. You don't encompass ours. That's the distinction. This means the permutation is fundamentally doesn't make sense. We can solve your theorization, but you don't solve ours. All there King Guards are arguments that Leroy and Smith already assume, but ask, how are you unable to grapple with the way that genocide structure? This should be particularly relevant in the way they say that black women are key for the expansion and grabbing of land, but our argument is that land is not the structure of violence for Native people. I think this has been particularly clear from the 1 and C about how genocide is structuring. You have misread this argument. Now, on the two arguments here is we should reject the app means the perm doesn't work. Rejecting the app includes rejecting utopia. 3 links are just as the permutation, and all links are also links to the perm because they operate through the same metaphysics that explicitly maintains utopia. Now, the 1 and R goes mostly conceded. They have conceded the affirmative sustains the capacity of the archive and debate to include black women's voices. I when they try to create a world in which black women can be heard. Young evidence says this move categorizes actually creates a form of catharsis in which ethnographical sites such as the Williams evidence translate the screams of Anna Brown and statistically destroy affirmative solvency by the utopia that never escapes the gratuitous of violence. Also seen with the Bernstein evidence which describes revolutionary time but one of redress reparations and zones of healing which the logical recuperated politics they can wait for the world that will never come. This double turns their own errands and Woolrich Davidson locates back within the grammar of wellness and state black women's back captivity and locates utopian knowledge and escape random black but said the completion of it. Now B is the masochism argument. The assumption the 1 says that we should just forget whiteness is the settlers' desires. It lets them utilize a masochistic relationship to blackness to solidify own ethical allows white Latinos such as Secarello and Meyer to gain enjoyment from the notion that white genocide is only ever become constantly relying on the notion of conscious raising the Collins evidence as a way to produce a new future, which the logic if we only knew better, imagine people will change, and that holds out a violent hope in white futurity and sees the alternative refusal as a mode of unfixing. Instead politicize the concept of absence of the archive. They can't be removed through rereading the history, the orientation towards ghosts, understand genocide and slavery, not as events that produce meanings or utopias, but instead the destruction of meaning that stabilizes the concept of subjectivity itself. This means the affirmative actually creates a limit of investments of violence and creates perverse investment in a black institution. Means the alternative doesn't link to the superwoman decided because it says that it's not that you didn't do enough, and so your argument has double turned itself. And now the Lacan arguments are not sufficiently just a bloody extension of Warren that is completely new in the 1AR. But 2 is that in Warren's talking about psychiatry, which is distinct from psychoanalysis. It's not about medicalization or biochemistry. Second argument here is that this is not a reading of Gabby or Rooney's psyche, but rather an articulation of how the libido economy works and the way that we make the investments in that libido economy that are violent. Now the link framing the argument there is a couple of 4 implications. First of it is libido activity participating in the fantastic project the affirmative increase says libido investment in genocide means that the non-unique these are links are not non-unique and their specific investment is uniquely bad. And B is being confirmed with the affirmative said now them in there means you don't allow them away and sort of we change the meaning arguments because the symbolic order over determines how words leave us, and C is signifying change holding the unspoken words called the text, and C and D is that every link is a solvency. Take out every link to settle clones, a link to anti-blackness, which means they reinvest things to produce their impacts. Now the links, I'm going to go for 2 links before I do that. I want to talk a little bit about first of all the 1AR explanation of why utopic dreaming actually produced a relief is blippy and not responsive to the warrants of the block. Don't allow new 2AR explanations. I won't get a 3AR if you can't draw a line between the 2AC, 1AR, and 2AR. Don't evaluate it. You first link is utopianism. You should question why the word utopia is in the 1AC at all if none of their evidence cites it, which means that their relief break is not rooted in utopia, but rather the way that we create love and care. Our argument is that by constantly giving people the energy to go back to the doctor that destroys that energy in the first place is fucking violent. They say would you create the reason to live to be just so that you can experience the same violence over and over again? Rather, the alternative says that we are able to politicize the policing in which absence of greater capacity for us to reject the calls to constant health and wellness, produce pathology in the body that creates microaggressions that are constantly invested in. They have conceded that the move to utopia always becomes scripted, and someone is always to blame for why we have not achieved this utopia. This is the, you can see the examples in which black queer bodies become pathologized. The reason for why we don't stand with black women are the way these constantly get articulated. Furthermore, warrant evidence has already conceded that they don't reach this, which means this is just a cynical nihilism that constantly fails us. Furthermore, there's literally no explanation of the way in which the Merzenoff evidence constantly makes a call for the mechanisms of redress or liberation that fuels back into the Hartman evidence. That means that black women are only re-energized so they continue to labor to produce the utopia for everyone else. This turns the entirety of their burnout arguments to means one, people still burn out and face psychological violence, and two, that you only energize people so you can use them in the end.
the nation to give a roadmap, but we're flowing everything straight down, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can give a roadmap if it makes you feel better. It's not gonna change anything on this side of the room.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then I guess just start flowing. Basic risk calculus flows out. There's a high chance the links are applicable to school and the app doesn't do anything uniquely to trigger them, and the high risk that the neg exclusively self-document from their method, and there's only a risk that the app can account for them, so you default to the app for the more inclusive method. You can also go neg on app on presumption because the phrasing of the alternative and the one is to hold the app responsible for the complicity in native genocide, but they still give no metric for which you evaluate complicity and who should be held accountable for society. All of our analysis of how they paper over black women is the act of complicity in anti-blackness and anti-black women, which means if the punishment for complicity is violent and violence is allowed for the ballot, why go neg and instead default to the methods? The demand for a ballot or to vote neg when they are equally implicated in forms of violence means establishing a hierarchy of which offense is punishable and which matters more, i.e. anti-black violence is acceptable to some degree, so you vote neg whether scripting a native genocide complicity onto the app with no direct links, which means you become the arbitrator of how violence is allowable, or which is worse, which means voting negatively positions data violence as both more important and worthy of acknowledging with the ballot. This is why the purge vote is preferable, because when it resolves any residual links they didn't really go for, but you might think are still floating around in 232 and distance to the alternative or net benefits to the perm, and now you weight the L very low because it gets re-articulated various ways. When the one and C was to hold it responsible for native genocide, but they haven't disproven how the neg is not complicit in degrees of complicity, and the CX was to reject the app. Then the block was haunting, which means you should air app is the only clear method of doing something. Rejecting the app is not enough of a reason to hang your hat on, because they have conceded that the world already presumes against black women, so it's a burden of rejoinder to meet them in the middle, because the alternative is to vote for an inarticulable entity void of anything as long as it's not black women, which is the entire one I see was an impact issue. Now there, only other answer on how you weigh violence is that inclusion into humanity is something that's worse for natives, but they say but it's worse violent inclusion or for indigenous people, but that doesn't mean that the inclusion still doesn't provide the material benefits or get weaponized by them against black people. Yes, the method of how they can say yes, I am a savage, but at least I'm not a nigger. It's not about inclusion being good or bad. It's not inclusion is always not better than blackness, even if there's some forcing comfortability to it. They have conceded that inclusion is always a way to be articulated around them, even if you do not like that articulation away from blackness. It's still that articulation in the first place that positions blackness at the bottom. Now the archive debate, this archive stuff is unexplained in the 2NR. The 2NR just says that the app understands things through the archive, which can grasp gratuity of violence. This was answered in the 1AR as being nonsense. The app uses examination of particular moments and data to make the train claim in access of that data. Wooderson does the same thing. He examines court cases and prison data because these are necessary to understand how violence can't be explained solely through that, but the need to something outside. And it also would all the archive stuff about categories and data would also link back to them when their evidence talks about how you get to classify the mass. I mean, the mass and this is an native genocide. You read this through our app holistically, not just a random quote on the utopian. I'm gonna go down the utopianism links in Superwoman. This out here, they call it the Superman this, but obviously Superwoman. Frame all of their link arguments through the question of methodology. The settler colonialism exists now, which means that black women are already complicit in violent modes of thought. This means their links are functionally no impact unless they can resolve why black women engage in that form of violence in the first place. Our argument is that black women search for a form of liberal humanism has temporary quick fixes because they are temporarily exhausted by the world and cannot imagine a future worth living. When your life is worth living, it becomes easy to scapegoat people. It becomes easy to buy into that nation state because those are very quick rewards that feel good to stave off the intense psychic trauma you have internalized. Our argument is that the utopianism is a link turn because it gives black women the possibility of imagining a future impossible world where they can have value, can be cared for, even if it doesn't happen. It allows them to bring that hope into the real world. They bring down the feeling, and they bring down that feeling of mattering, which enables them to change how they relate in this world. This resolves the reason black women engage in violent colonial modes of thought that cause their impact in the first place. The neg has an idea without a method, which is an impossible burden that is the Superwoman disad placed on the black woman. It says that black women being sick and lashing out and tells them to stand up straight and fix themselves without a method to do so. This means that the alternative can never resolve why black women are violent or attach humanism to their impacts are terminally non-unique. They also solve nothing then because it refuses utopianism. This outweighs any possible links to the app because those links exist to the alternative too. And the scroll, if you can solve why black women are engaged in this violence or have violence done to them, only the app has a method that can change these things or the engagement or orientation towards and with violence. Their description of the alternative in 2NR is just refusing to invest, which doesn't generate a thing for black women to do, which means post-all black women are still investing libidinally in violence. If you can't look at the alternative and find a way or a place for black women, you default to the app because it's only a method of engaging how black women relate to violence, how they experience violence, and how they perform violence, which are all questions that I'm left asking after the world alternative. What happens in that? Now, first, and I'm gonna go for the pathology. This had Rooney Woodford and the 1NR. Their only answer was that Warren talked about psychology, not psychoanalysis, and the banality, but the act and the Warren talk about both. You read it as a whole, not just the pieces crossed by our Warren and Aaron, evidence and fantastic, the psychoanalysis and libidinal investments of first argument is that definitions of wellness and health of the mind are articulated through anti-black pathology. It gives an example of how definitions of sickness, like psychiatric disorder, were re-articulated to incarcerate black activists because refusing to get over slavery or waste was seen as a form of insanity. How drapetomania was given to diagnose slaves as who were running away because black freedom black freedom is always antithetical to the well-being or the wholeness, which means black people will always be seen as desiring a lack, not because they are actually lacking, but because any idea of black life is always seen as a lack within society. Now, utopianism resolves the last lack link, because utopianism is unconcerned with the reality, including the reality of whiteness. Utopic demand or ideals not an attempt to become white, but to imagine a world where whiteness is irrelevant. This is a link to the neg to their own case, because the two in our arguments about Haiti actually suffer violence in the future recreates this positioning of whiteness as a master signifier capable of destroying black resistance. This is the positioning of white people as those with the power and black people without turns the whole case, because they have performed a double turn with the alt-solving. Instead, the app says imagine a world where whiteness is irrelevant. Look, all of their links coming out of the two and are about utopianism, but read the context of the cards. They're all about a desire to actually achieve utopia, or see it in Rigvia, but instead says it's an imagination of an impossible possibility. You never try to achieve the utopia. It's a way of breaking out of time and then coming back down for yourself. Now, their only other argument is a cruel optimism, but I don't have any warrants on this. It's not about it's not about nihilism in the status quo. It's saying that nihilism is the status quo that captures black women's psyche and temporality. Utopianism is an only methodology of doing that. Ask yourself, what about the alternative actually breaks out of that nihilism of the status quo, other than just cementing it by saying that there's nothing you should do, you should just reject black women. If you don't see a vision of black women within the world of alternative, you default out. Also, what?
The app doesn't just send them back to the doctor.
The app doesn't just send them black women back to the doctors. It says you have the ability to access your own agency.
Debate.
We're all pretty good on like. How much time we got? Huh?
Probably not that much. I'm not talking shit to you though.
affirmative from Cornell. Okay, who wanna go first? Not me. I don't feel like talking.
I
Mine's
can't
super
leave.
small.
Okay, good. Yes.
I feel like I want to leave. I
Yeah, I
got.
gotta go.
Right.
Alright, basically.
I want to go first. I'm not ready.
Yeah, I just voted on this like black superwoman this ad. I didn't really think that at the end of the day you had like a method to like, you know, like contextualize. Like I feel like black women will still be like scripted, have to do labor. I don't really know what the world of y'all looks like. Also, I just feel like, you know, at the end of the day, I just feel like maybe some of your links are like I feel like they're winning like the contextualization of their shifting arguments in the 2AR because I feel like you're not really like even really explicitly responding to them being like you're shifting. You're just being like, well, that doesn't, you know, yeah, I just think like, you know, to you it's like a misnomer. So like you're just like it doesn't fucking matter. And so like, but to me it does matter because I think that the 1AC starts like, you know, from this place, and then the 1AC does. I don't know what the 1AC is really attempting to pull. Like, I don't know what it's attempting to say about the 1AC itself until the 2NC, and I feel like it's radically different in the cross-examination when you're attempting to, like, you know, explain, like, you know, and especially in like the 1NC cross-examination, I thought that was like, you know, kind of frustrating for me because like in some moments, like, I think they're resolving your lack argument, and so I don't really know, because like to me the Drake Germania shit was enough. Like, you know, I think that you're not, you know, like I feel like at the end of the day your 2R is like, nah, fam, it's like the you know, the whole like psychiatric, you know, stuff. You're like you like dismissed it, and so really for me it was just them recontextualizing it and then being like, well, this is literally how, like, you know, certain slaves were seen as desiring, but at the end of the day, you know, like that's how they're sort of, you know, constantly constructed as, you know, dying. Like I just don't know. I don't think you have a response to that personally. Yeah.
Yeah, mine is real simple. It was. I think that the entire time I was listening to the negative, I was like, this would be perfect against our AF because our AF says that we use our utopianism and those things in order to do something about it, like in order to create a pathway to changing something. And the AF the entire time, and Gabby, I wish you would use this language later, but I caught it from the 2AC was the AF is to let the black woman put her bag down. Like, it's just like, put it down for a second, and then regroup to go forward in everyday life. And I think that the Nega's attempting to answer it as if she's just like, every time you say they can never actualize a future, every time you say they can never resolve the impacts, every time you say each of those things, I'm like, yeah, that's what she said. She said, no, I can't resolve any of those things. And I think that what you end up going for is I don't think that there's an answer to, if this is like a mental break in my head, how did I engage in the type of violence that you're talking about? And I don't know why.
I think. So first of all, I think that your utopianism evidence gets you in more trouble and makes it more difficult for you to demonstrate the link. I think that Gabby and David are absolutely right that it is not assuming the affirmative. It's not speaking to the affirmative. It is very much so talking about white people's consciousness and not black people's consciousness. Even if, for example, you could get the link because black women were producing these exact same kinds of narratives as white people, thus positioning them to reproduce some kind of oppression against people, because that's how the settler uses that kind of imaginatory world to get out of being responsible for the fact that they are messed up in some way. I just don't think that I don't think that evidence helps helps you to try to create an argument or a link argument to the affirmative. And I think I think the evidence hurts you. I think that your analysis arguments in the 2 and C are better, but this card is harmful for you. And the same thing I think about your analysis of the Collins evidence, for example, from the 1AC, when you talk about the consciousness raising link, that argument in particular just sort of operationalizes the way in which black women figure into the negative, because you're reading that evidence as consciousness raising for white people and it's consciousness raising black woman to black woman. And so those kinds of slippages start to make it more difficult for me to see where the black woman appears in the negative. And then the other problem for you is the way that you've written the tag to one of the cards in the 1NC, the last card where you do the rejection argument. It's like the sentence that you use right there, Gabby sort of quotes again in the 2AR, I think directly is an attempt to hold black women culpable for not talking about you. And I think that sort of grants all of the arguments that Gabby is making, which is everybody wants us to labor for them. You want us to persistently labor for you, and then you don't want to be okay with the fact that sometimes we're like, we have to labor for ourselves. And so then at the end of the debate, I'm like, so what do black women do in relationship to the alt? So what's that refusal look like? Are we refusing ourselves because we're somehow implicated in settler colonialism? That's just unclear. So I think that part of what you need to do, first of all, you need to delete that part of the sentence out of the alt debate, because I think that it sounds like you're trying to hold black women culpable for something that they are not responsible for. So delete that sentence, but you can still go for the alt in the way that you want to. But you need to describe what black women's participation in the method of the alt does for black women. And I think that if you read the alt that way, right, what is this kind of refusal, this like persistent rejection? What if it's not just that, what if you frame Gabby's sometimes the black woman needs to put her bag down as a temporal engagement that means that sometimes she'll pick that bag back up and then go for arguments about why black women should not make themselves productive at all, right? So black women's perspective should be a complete refusal, a complete rejection.
You don't feel like that's in the 2R at all?
I don't think that that's how you're talking about this at all. If you think that's how you're talking about it, you should go back and listen to the 2NR.
I feel like it's how the link is kind of explained.
Which link do you think is explained that way?
The utopianism link, right? About the question of like, if the reason that we created Desire to Live is like to keep going back to these.
I think that's a much more persuasive. I think that is a persuasive argument. So that's part of where I go to on my flow. But I don't think you do the impact level of does black women need to do X. I think you do say.
So you just feel like the alt needs better explanation.
I just think the alt needs a better. Otherwise, Gabby's gonna get away every time with saying where is the space for black women in the alt? What are you expecting us to do? And that just sounds like more labor, right? So I think you do need to say, this isn't about black women having. And I think you say this in the 2NC. This isn't about black women having to labor for natives, right? That's not your interpretation. Even your evidence says this is not about people having to like. It's not just about recognizing that this is the issue, but it's a recognizing of the way in which these theories are implicated in one another, and then you want to make an argument about why the method that you offer is a better resolution to this psychic violence that black women are experiencing, and that cycle that you keep talking about, right? Because I think those things are persuasive, particularly on the psychoanalysis part. I thought the ressentiment arguments from the 2NC were incredibly persuasive. So I think that what you need to say is that Gabby's method will keep black women going around, hey group, going around in a circle over and over again where they pick up the bag, they put it back down, they pick up the bag, they put it back down.
Needs to be explained more in the context of like this complete refusal.
Exactly. What does that look like for black women? Because I think the work that you're doing on the link level, I don't think you're necessarily winning the archive part of it. I think you're winning the argument. I think you're winning ressentiment, right? Or you're winning this cycle, right? And black women keep participating in this cycle over and over again. So I think that you want to frame the alt as a rejection, a complete rejection of any productivity by black women, that they have been used enough, they have done enough work for people. All of that is just something that black women should stop doing, right? Rather than, and frame it in comparison to Gabby's discussion of the temporal, picking your bag up, putting it back down, picking your bag up, putting it back down.
The no real explanation between the internal link of like we imagine utopia and that creates like re-energizes.
No,
Like,
it's a break. I think that you think that I think that imagination of utopia is not very big. The utopia that they're imagining is just a break from reality where you're like.
Yeah, I guess my question is like, I kind of make this argument that like that break is not necessarily re-energizing in any way.
I think that Gabby is very clear that without that break is Black women's death.
Sure. Okay.
Right. So I think that you gotta figure out how to be able to say that something different than that, right? Like if Black women don't take that break, you can say that break is like not necessarily re-energizing, but if Black women think it is such that they can go back to laboring, then that's what they think it is, and they can go back to laboring, and they think that's important. So why should they not do that practice, right? Why should they stop doing it, and why is your practice a better way for us to just, you should just say that your all is, you should never have to labor, so you should never have to keep breaking the stuff down.
Cycle, or like the American Outback talks about this cycle, and just be like, this cycle is fucked up, like you should just refuse.
You should refuse the cycle, exactly, right? You explain the all in that way, and then I think you're much closer to like having something to say to win the debate. I don't know what Gabby's response would be to that argument, but I think that that would be much more in keeping with where I would be willing to sign my ballot, given the work that you did in the 2NC. And I think that would have, if you hadn't gone for the archive argument, but instead situated your arguments on that sort of reading of psychoanalysis, and then gone for how the alts can resolve that, I think it takes out all of the 2AC, 2AR offense. And if you stop talking about some of this other stuff that you are talking about, but just focus on that, you would have had a lot more time, I think, to flesh out those arguments. And then I think that the 2NR becomes a hell of a lot more persuasive.